We are now in the presence of pure being, immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. We acknowledge thy presence and thy power, O blessed Spirit. In thy divine wisdom now, erase our mortal limitations, and from thy pure substance of love, bring into manifestation our world according to thy perfect law. The word for today is forgive. My soft heart expresses love as I forgive. Holding on to hurt caused by someone's words or actions is harmful to mental, physical, and emotional health. If I stew over these negative feelings, it's likely I will feel worse. It is when I'm willing to let go of these troubling emotions that the healing begins. Forgiveness is healing. Realizing the slight may have been unintentional, or the one who hurt me may be unaware of my pain, I can feel compassion. I let go by repeating the words, I forgive you, silently to myself, which helps me speak these words aloud when I am able. If I have caused unintentional harm, I ask for forgiveness. Through divine love, I forgive as I am forgiven. As I express this love, I mend feelings and open the way to peace and harmony. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Luke 6:37.
So we got figured out what the way is today. Now let's ask ourselves how we implement that way. And we're going to share in this beautiful statement. I invite you to look at it if it's new to you. It's our statement of being here at Unity East of Clinton Township. Take a deep breath in. As we become open and receptive to that way that is made clear to us and the way of acting upon it, to speak with the power and authority of the Word. God is all, both invisible and visible. One presence, one mind, one power is all. This one that is all is perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. I am an individualized expression of God. I am ever one with this perfect life, perfect love,
and perfect sustenance.
So it is. We bring this into our time of reflection that we call meditation. And I invite you to ask yourself, what helps you become more conscious? Just letting go of what's already occurred this morning, the thought of this afternoon. That we can tune in as that individualized expression of that which we call God. So very prayerfully, we become receptive, open, and we pray in a sacred way that we might become more the instrument. O thou, O beloved oneness that we call God, O thou of many names and thou of no name. We are here now. I am here. I breathe in the sounds, the temperature, the substance of that which holds me up on this planet today, a chair, a building. And I know that I and we are breathed by the invisible, by the very spirit of life, that though I breathe, it is not I, but the very breath of life that breathes me. It is not my will that has brought me to this now moment. It is the power and the presence of God, the very will of the universe, that I am here. I am. And although I may be confused or in pain or suffering or challenged, though we may be challenged in life, in what is before us, there is that which is greater. And we are open and receptive to it now in the silence and in the quiet. That quietness may be our intentional way of saying to all life, I am the instrument. I am open and receptive to the living Spirit of God, of truth, of life. Give thanks for this now moment, this precious life, this precious opportunity to be the instrument of peace, instrument of love, compassion, an instrument of faith and strength, of wisdom, understanding. And though I may question, or we may question together, we affirm together again as a spiritual community. There is only one presence and one power in our lives at work through each and every one of us, through all creation. This power and this presence is unfailing, unwavering, and has not made a mistake in assuring our life this day. And for this we are so grateful. And amen. Ancient language of Jesus, Amen. This ancient word that means we plant this vision in the earth that it may grow, that it may serve all people everywhere, those that are hungry, those that are imprisoned in mind, body, or spirit. And for the water and the earth and the air and all living creatures, all the non-humans, we dedicate our energy, our prayers, as instruments to really benefit and bless all. Amen.
It's not sunny outside today, but we can have sun in our heart, sun in our minds. You might want to sing along with me. This is a 1972 song by Johnny Nash. Anybody know what it is? Johnny Nash. I can see clearly now the rain is on. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone is the dark clouds that make me blind. It's gonna be a bright, bright, bright sunny day. It's gonna be a bright, bright, bright sunny day. Yes, I can make it now, the day is gone. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. Here's the rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be a bright, bright, bright sunny day. Look all around, it's nothing but blue skies. Look all straight, nothing but blue skies.
Am I in the right place? Yeah, I'm in the right place. I'll be scared now. Okay. Well, friends, that's me up there several years ago. And I really am delighted to be with you today during this Lenten season. It's still a season for nonviolence, and I think that's when I was here last. We were just starting into what's called the season for nonviolence. Arun Gandhi and his wife Sadhana that had started the season for nonviolence, marking the memorial anniversaries of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. And that memorial anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr. is coming right up here at the beginning of April. So it's been an amazing season to continue to study and look at the ways of nonviolence. And I've been, seems like all over the map since I last saw you. So it's good to be back right here. And of course it's Lent. And today what I want to share is the burning, overflowing love as forgiveness. And to really take the time to explore a model of forgiveness, maybe not the way we traditionally think of forgiveness. But Lent is an experience. It's a set of practices that leads up to Easter. Most of you are familiar with that. What we may not think about often is the fact that those individuals that started these practices that lead to Easter, and really a celebration that, guess what, they might have crucified Jesus, but they did not take away the spiritual significance, the spiritual understandings, and ultimately what we now could call this Christ awareness. That cannot be taken away. And those followers of Jesus, as was Jesus, were Jewish people for the most part. They had practices already. They had Passover. They had their practices. But as those early people, and particularly the Jewish people, were actually being killed. Romans were coming in. They were taking over. Sadly, the experience that they were going through is much like what we see on the land of Israel and Palestine and the Gaza Strip right now. I say sadly because we are witnessing something that is so challenging for us to really understand, but it was similar at that time. And this man, Jesus, rises up in the midst as a teacher of nonviolence. And he is revealing ways to turn the tables, to cross the social boundaries, to reach out to people that were considered untouchables and outcasts, to challenge the religious thinking of his time. And as he did this, he drew to himself. And of course, anybody that was drawing attention to themselves, the Romans were very curious and interested, actually ultimately were arresting them. And at different times in the history of the Roman rule, there might be as many as 2,000 crucifixions in a day. So we may not realize what it was like for those early followers and how important it was for them to find practices that could help them sustain these insights and these teachings of Jesus, right? We may not really comprehend what that was like. And we now, all these thousands of years later, we have what we call Lent, leading to Easter. And in this time, as I think about it, the beautiful Lenten booklet, if you haven't picked it up yet, I think it's probably here because this ministry does such a great job of bringing in these Unity publications. I brought you a whole stack of Unity magazines. They're free, they're out there on the table. They're from a Unity member who's been collecting them for years. I hope you'll take them with you. But today is all about forgiveness in our Unity Lenten booklet and of course our daily word. And there's a beautiful passage that we hold up, and it's made this cup pass. And I'm going to ask us to understand that that cup was not about a life, like a sacrifice of a life, but it was something far greater. And that when we understand what was the words that were being used in the context of the time, we might have a clue about how we also can live out a profound forgiveness with our very life. So in Easter, we often say that Easter is the celebration of resurrection consciousness. And I would like for you to be the group, one of the groups that I work with today, that questions that. That are we really resurrecting something? Is that really what we're studying here? Because when I look out my door, like you're looking out your door today, I don't see daffodils resurrecting their old body. I don't see birds flying back in and resurrecting their old nests. I don't see my oak tree trying to resurrect what it was last year. Do you see any examples in life that are about resurrecting what was? No. So the life principle that we are working with is about life. It's not resurrecting what was. It's actually demonstrating that life always brings about newness. Newness, new nests, new flowers, new seeds, right? Do you see that with me? So somewhere we got this notion that Easter is about resurrecting, the resurrected Christ. I would like for us to challenge that. I would like for us to consider that there is an ever new awareness of that which we call Christ. And in fact, it is a principle in all creation. The wonderful Teilhard de Chardin, if you're aware of his work on this planet, he is the first person that I'm aware of that started utilizing this phrase, the coming of the cosmic Christ. That the awareness of something, a notion called Christ, has been born into the consciousness of our race. But it has not come into full expression yet, because it involves wholeness. When we want to celebrate the power of the Christ, we do celebrate it in you and me, here in Unity and New Thought and Beyond. We emphasize this for almost 140 years. But we've got to broaden that. So Matthew Fox, another amazing person who actually was kicked out of the Catholic Church, and many others before him, when he had something radical to share, which is the coming of the cosmic Christ. That there is a principle of newness that wants to express a greater and greater expression of newness. And we're all challenged to do that, you and me, this ministry going through change right here, right now, going through grief. We've got to honor that grief. But this ministry and every leader that has ever been here, and I'm not just talking about the people you hired as your ministers, I'm talking about every single person that showed up in their presence. They're not trying to create what was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. We're here as Unity Truth students because there's a principle of life that is newness, the new expression that's to come through us. It's a transformative process and message and reality. So that's what we're here to explore today. I would say that when I think about it, I remember Matthew and I years ago, and you get to be with my partner in life. He comes here also. We seem to be by divine appointment with you again at a time of change in this ministry. We're, of course, grateful that we can be here and be of any support. We have so much to offer in our Unity movement in our region. Some of you know I serve as the president for the Great Lakes Unity region. And so just know you are not alone. There's a lot of support for you. There's going to be a lot of questions. That's what newness often is, right? It's not familiar. So you know we've gone through change in the past, just like the birds, build a new nest, build a new consciousness. So Matthew and I went through a really low time in our lives together, and we've been together for 47, 48 years now. And I was remembering this experience that we had. We'd gone to listen to Neil Donald Walsh, if you know who he is. And he's written many books, and he was at the ministry, in our ministry in Oregon. And I thought maybe I would read out of that book of his, one of those books. I've been having babies and starting a ministry, and we've started an organic farm. You know, who has time to read when you're doing all that? But anyway, he was coming to the ministry, so I decided to pick up this book. and had turned to this section, and it was just really about kind of like passion and energy of life that's flowing through us. And after we listened to Neil that evening, Matthew and I sat on the couch, and I said, where's your passion? Yeah, passion, children. We could remember times in our life where we had a lot of energy and passion, but we were at a low. And we decided that we would go into a prayer practice, and after a week we returned to talk about the whole thing, and we had one word that we felt as filled with energy. It was the word newness. And it was maybe the first time he and I had a prayer that was found in one word. We're very verbal people, at least when we're up here on the stage. He's kind of quiet at home, I must say, but he plays a lot of music. Anyway, we had this one word newness. Within a few months, we were here in Michigan. And so I share that with you because when we are open and receptive and willing to work with the principle of all creation, which is to bring new life, always new life, we have to be prepared to let go of something. It's invariable that there is some work for us to do, some letting go. I served a ministry that was written up in the newspaper in Portland, Oregon, because it didn't have enough energy to do potluck. And I said, we might need to practice the winter season together. We might need to do that. We might need to strip away, not everything, but so much of what's so familiar to us, so we can really be with the new energy that comes out of winter, right? Spring. So we were written up as a ministry that embraced embraced winter. And within a few years after that, we really did strip away things. We were ministry in a box. We were in a rental location, and we would come together and set it all up, pack it all up when we were done. So what did I have to work with them? I worked with their order of service. We let go of singing the Lord's Prayer every single Sunday. Now that was different. But guess what? The musician for the ministry wrote a new version of the Lord's Prayer. When we didn't have energy for a potluck, we went out to a restaurant. We just kept finding that we could let go and newness would spring up. Within about 4 years, they bought their first property. But they would never have got there, I don't believe, in my professional opinion, take it or leave it, without becoming willing to let go in consciousness in some capacity. So we embrace the winter in our lives and the letting go so that we can have that which comes forward, a new expression. And I think we long for that. I think that we get in routines and we begin to long for it. How many of you have gone into your job and you fulfill your job description and it just starts getting old after a while? You want something new, don't you? How many of you get up every single morning and you think, gee, same old, same old? We long for newness. We don't have to get rid of our spouses and we don't have to get rid of our houses. But we could acknowledge that we long for newness. There's something in the design of life that's knocking at our heart saying, there's more, there's more. Well, there's a saying that Jesus gave us that I think really applies to all this. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Unless a seed, I would say, falls to the ground, it does not grow. It has all the potential. How do we let go of what was and realize the news? How does a seed do it? It lets go its casing, right? It is affected by the life and the storms and the weather around it, but its inherent capacity is released that it may grow. How did Jesus do it? Let's think about that for a moment. Jesus, who in this little bit of the story is in the Garden of Gethsemane. It's a beautiful olive garden. It's beautiful, but Gethsemane means pressed oil. Jesus was hard pressed. In some translations, he was on the ground. Beads of perspiration. He was hard pressed to do that which was his to do. He had an awareness that he was going to be arrested because so many before him had been arrested. His cousin, who was known as the way shower before Jesus, you remember the story of him, he'd already been decapitated. It was not a pleasant place to be. He did not have any reason to believe that he wouldn't be arrested and most likely crucified. What was his to do? How did he handle it? He goes apart a while. It means, for me, he kind of went apart. He had followers that were there and they were supposed to watch, and he would come back. They weren't watchful. In some translations, they were supposed to stay awake, and they weren't staying awake. There was something about this scene that I think that for you and I, we could look at. He was not in his right mind because he continued to serve in the ways that he did and turning tables and bringing so much attention to himself. He was not in his right mind. He was what we would call, he was in a Christ mind. He was in a Christ mind. It's not, how many of us would say this? Like it's not in your right mind to go into a war zone, and yet we have volunteers that are going into Palestine right now. We have humanitarian aid that is showing up there right now. Who in their right mind wants to go to a war zone? But it can be in your Christ mind to serve and to give for a higher good, a greater good, right? Okay, so we know this is possible. What is this Christ mind business that we talk about? I thought, I got to explore that again. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, said that Christ is the perfect idea of God in you and me. The perfect idea of God in you and me. So for me, I look at the word perfect, which translates from an ancient word which means whole. God is the whole idea of God in you and me. Rather like the whole idea of the echinacea plant that's going to grow in my garden is in that seed. Not the part idea, the whole idea, right? So we want to think about wholeness. What is God? In Unity and New Thought, we have taught for many, 100 and something years, God is omnipresent. Not just in you and me, omnipresent. God is omniscience. Not an all-knowing God, like made in the image and after the likeness of humans, but God is this infinite creative intelligence, this knowledge, and those are human words, everywhere, present, accessible to all. Right? So we begin to have the sense of God as being not made in our image. I like to use this word recently, omnicentric. God is omnicentric, the center from which flows an unending expression is everywhere present. That means in you and in me. God is centered in you and me, like in the seed, ready to express wholeness and fullness. So we can be with that. We can be in that mind. It's at hand, it's in our midst, it's within. It is actually more than just in the humans. So Charles and Myrtle, thank you so much. We're going to revise this a little bit. The cosmic crisis through all creation, not just in you and me, but Paul got it right. Put on the mind of Christ. There's something that we have to work with as humans, minds, right? We work with these minds, and we want to get into these minds. Our old human story is it's all about the humans. That's our business as usual story. That's what we took out of the creation story in Genesis. It's all about the humans having dominance over all creation and subduing it. Is that not right?
Yes.
Okay. I know you've been studying this for a while. I tell you, this dominance and business as usual model is not sustainable. The humans doing that to the planet and to the earth is not sustainable. So that's our old story. Joanna Macy, brilliant woman, serving in so many ways. She's in her 90s now, still serving, still showing up, still writing books. Because that's the old story. And now we are in the time of the great unraveling, because that was not sustainable. You try that in a family. Any parent knows this. You try to dominate. You get to a certain point, they just rebel. They're gone. It doesn't work real well. We have to learn a new story while it's all unraveling. And it may feel like systems are falling, and they are. And it may seem like we are unwisely tearing them apart, and that might be true too. But the new story requires that we let go. And the new story we are discovering. It's the time of the great turning, Joanna says. And the new story is one that's very much about coherence. You know that word? I like to share that word. Scientists use it, and HeartMath is an organization that's been studying it. It's where the thinking and the feeling come together. They're in coherence. They have little electronic type gadgets in. You can find out whether you are electromagnetically in coherence or not. You already know when you're not. Struggling, and worrying, and anxiety, and fearing. Does that feel like everything's working together? No. Coherence is when all of this is coming together. Matthew Fox, in his book, The Coming of the Cosmic Christ, says the evidence of the cosmic Christ is coherence. It's when we are working together in the heart mind, and we are coming from the heart mind. Do you know that the word mind in the Old Testament comes from a root that means heart? Heart, mind. They weren't talking about being up here in the cerebral cortex that we just value so much as humans. They were talking about bringing it together, the heart, mind. So what happens when we see that occurring? Well, people like co-founders Ed Stoll and his wife, Dr. Judy, veterinarians. Ed Stoll grew up in the house I live in. And they founded an organization out in my area called PEAS, P-E-A-S, Pond Equus Animal Sanctuary. And animals that have been abandoned and abused are brought to this sanctuary. And they are cared for. What happens when the heart-mind comes into being? The heart-mind is greater than governments. I think that's what we're talking about right now. I'm just saying, we got a lot of world governments doing things that are just really difficult to believe. But here's a story that comes out of Estonia. Estonia is a country that has been dominated by other countries for years. And in World War II, it was taken over by Russia, which was not called Russia at that time. It was called Siberia. And the people, of course, many of them were killed and deported, exactly what we are seeing in Ukraine right now. Okay, the same MO happening at that time. And what happened over there? A set of harsh rules was imposed, strict curfews, any show of patriotism to their original culture was forbidden. The people lived in fear for 45 years, but finally in 1984 they started to strain against the harsh barriers. The Estonians were tired of being suppressed. They started doing one of the smallest things that the Soviets had forbidden. They started singing their native songs. This little booklet was written by one of my students when I was teaching. An 8th grader. Just saying. Heart mind. They gathered together and they sang what had been their national anthem. Land of my fathers, land that I love. And because it was sung in native Estonian and not Russian, the Soviets didn't understand that they were singing that song for quite a while. But then they began to protest, and larger. They gathered in greater and greater groups. Because the Estonian flag was banned, they had 3 stripes of blue, white, and black. So they got 3 different flags, each one color. So it wasn't recognized by the Russians what was going on. And they began to gather and they began to sing. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev introduced two new principles, glasnost, perestroika. Maybe some of us remember that, restructuring. And the USSR had not been paying attention, but by September 88, they had no choice to admit that the patriotic spirit was growing. On the 12th of September, a massive song festival was held in the capital. 300,000 people gathered, a third of the population gathered to sing that song. The Soviets were scared that they were losing control. They were confused because there was no war, there was no evidence of violence, and they sent several tanks in, but when they arrived, they found something extraordinary. 2 million people had gathered, not only from Estonia, but from the neighboring countries of Latvia and Lithuania, and they all linked hands and they began to sing as loud as they could. They stretched along the border, along the major road called the Baltic Way, 370 miles of a human chain, singing a song. And the Russian government withdrew, and they are their own country to this day. The power of coherence right now, the heart mind that will not bow down to violent action. Jesus is in a garden in the midst of violent action. He speaks, at least we are told these words, "If this cup may pass, but not my will, thy will." It may move our hearts today to realize that the word cup is an Aramaic word, kasa. It's identical to the Hebrew word kavas. And it was a cultural story about stork, kavas, stork, cup, kava. The stork was noted for its tender, loving care for its young, and even care for young that were not its own. Like all those people on the 370 miles, all those countries gathering, holding hands and singing. Legend has it that during times of famine, a mother stork will peck her breast till it bleeds and feeds her young with her own blood. This is the context of the words that Jesus was speaking. An alternative meaning from a Hebrew college is that nurturing love would pass from Jesus. The Semitic mindset would instantly see the word play, that Jesus was saying something more, and that the word to pass meant literally to cross over like a stream flowing over. It was the Greek later that interpreted it as avoid. If this cup can pass, if I can avoid this crucifixion, if I can avoid later interpretation. But in the Aramaic it was, may this love, this nurturing love that he must have felt so deeply in his heart, the heart mind of the Christ, was wanting to overflow. And he's praying from the greatest spiritual humility. If this great love can pass over to others, let it be so, but not my will. Is that forgiveness? Is it a form of forgiveness to love when we have been abandoned, when we've been hurt, when we've been harmed, when those are around us are doing harm, when we know that we may do harm or have done harm? Is it forgiveness to want love to flow out in a greater way? I would suggest that that's the Christ mind. I would suggest that it was not Jesus sacrificing his body, which was Old Testament. It was an overlay of the ones coming out of Egypt and the sacrifice of the children. And It was Old Testament consciousness. But Jesus is a New Testament consciousness in our midst. How do we do this? How can you and I do this today? We're going to walk out here today and we're going to be triggered by something. Am I right? Maybe my children will call me this weekend and I'll feel sad and I'll be tempted again, to be separated out, heart and mind. All kinds of things that will happen. But what will it be? Wisdom, you're, I think, still studying wisdom this month, are we? Yeah. The power of wisdom is the power of choice. It's making a choice. It's making a choice. So today we can make a choice. We can choose that burning, overflowing love that lives as us. We can pick up a newspaper and we can practice. We can read news and we can practice a burning, overflowing love. We can choose nonviolent action for justice. We can find groups that are dedicated, like Better Angels. I know our ministry, Unity Ministry in Farmington Hills, they have 5 years now since the murder of George Floyd. They have 5 years now of learning the ways of nonviolence, bringing in speakers, going on field trips, bringing in Better Angels to find what's polarizing our own thinking. We can make those choices. We can prioritize that. Let me close with this quote. John F. Kennedy. Those who call peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. Those who call peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. Friends, we are already in a revolution. It's called the principle of life. Newness wants to be expressed in our lives today. Let's choose that. We're going to receive this moment to bless our offerings, our love offerings, as we call it. We want to bless all those that are here serving today because they showed up, got the building heat turned on, came in, opened the doors, made coffee, made sure the sound system's working, got a program in our hands. That's a love offering. We bless those love offerings also. And our financial gifts, we sure give thanks for them. And you may need to hold yours with a burning, overflowing love. If you have had challenges with your finances, felt that you didn't know why the universe wasn't providing you with what you required, we can forgive. We can be in a burning, overflowing love for what is right in our midst right now. Let's affirm our love offering, shall we? Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I give joyfully and easily, for the universe is my source, and abundance is my nature. So it is.
I will be playing to you a musical selection written by a Soviet composer, Dmitri Shostakovich. Well, I bet that you've heard the name before. And there is a phenomenon of Dmitri Shostakovich, because I think personally that the name is more well known than the music. And it's not because it's not played during the concerts or you cannot find it on YouTube. No, the reason is somewhat different. If I would ask just about anybody, what do you think would be your favorite piece by Dmitri Shostakovich? Even if I would ask a musician, what is your favorite piece by Dmitri Shostakovich? Okay. That's exactly it. So even the musician, and I've been a musician for over 60 years, my answer would be two selections. My favorite. Favorite meaning that you can go back to many times and listen and just breathe it in and all that. He wrote an enormous amount of music. Consider that. He wrote in every single genre that is out there. Or none. And I think, and I wanted also to mention that comparing to maybe other composers, like if you ask me what's your favorite by Chopin, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, old, it's a mile long list. But then again, favorite meaning I go back to them. I listen to them, and I can listen to them in passing. Like maybe as a background of, during a nice dinner with friends. Not that was music by Shostakovich. It is a phenomenon. I think, and this is my personal opinion, just again because I'm a professional. So it doesn't mean that you have to agree or go exactly by what I'm saying. My personal opinion, I just would like to share it with you. I think that to understand and fully appreciate the music by Shostakovich, you have to know really well about the times in which he lived and about the circumstances that he had to deal with on a daily basis. And he was there. He's a Soviet composer. He was there to experience the chaos of the Russian Revolution of 1970. We have to go back to that. He also lived through the horror of the Civil War right after the Revolution, the anarchy of the 1920s. He lived through the reign of the most sinister figure in history, Joseph Stalin. We just heard the story. That is the continuation of the reign of Stalin. He lived through the purges, the darkest times in the history, the purges of 1930s. Through the bloodiest, the most horrible World War II that claimed millions of lives. The purges of 1940s and 50s. He lived through it all. And so no wonder that the feelings and thoughts about all of that he expressed in his music. If you listen to the music of Shostakovich, I can promise you that you will have the most unique and unforgettable experience. That music, believe me, because I'm telling you what I experienced, that music could tear your soul apart, could lift you up to the highest heights and then hurl you in the darkest abyss. It's a roller coaster of emotions. But considering the life that he lived, his attitude towards Stalin, because that was a dominator in the lives of many people, if not all. His attitude towards Stalin and his evil deeds was well known. And it's just, to me, it's a miracle, honestly. I think it's a divine intervention that he did not share the fate of his many friends and colleagues. He was very close, many times he was very close to that very thin line, that point of no return, literally. But I think that even Stalin could appreciate the magnitude of the genius of Shostakovich. Because many times in the music, it was a music satire, they call it. Because that's how he expressed what he thought about what was going on. And I guess even Stalin could appreciate the fact that even during the darkest times, during those difficult circumstances, Shostakovich, and this is a true fact, because if you read his memoirs and his notes, you can see that even in the most difficult circumstances, Shostakovich remained one of the most honest human beings. He kept his humanity, which was very difficult in those days. And I think that even Stalin would appreciate his strength as a human being. So he did not dare to give an order to completely destroy Shostakovich, and thank God for that, because he left the legacy. And if you learn a little bit more about, as I said, about the life and what he lived through, then you will appreciate the depth of his music. And I promise you, again, as I told you at the beginning, it will be an unforgettable experience. And as always in everybody's lives, he experienced the times of, happiness and joy, and almost normality, however fleeting. And so during those times, he wrote music that is much more understandable, lighter music, beautiful music, gorgeous. He was a great melodist. And so the piece that I'm going to be playing was written in one of those times. He wrote an instrumental suite for jazz orchestra in 1938. And interestingly enough, it was well received, but it was interestingly enough that the orchestral version was lost during the World War II, but the piano version survived. And so in the 1950s, that music was revived from the piano version. And then it was, made for the jazz orchestra or orchestra again. But the true comeback of this particular movement, the Waltz Number 2 in C minor, the true triumphant comeback happened about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, thanks to Andrew Rue and his orchestra, and also thanks to internet, the technology. It's all over the internet. If you put in Waltz Number 2, it's all over the place. To me, it's a beautiful music. The short is beautiful music, haunted, beautiful melody. To me, it is a nostalgic piece. I might be wrong, but I think that he was
picturing the days of long past, where everything was quiet and peaceful, and you can take a stroll in the park and listen to the beautiful music played by band sitting somewhere in the white gazebo. So that's what I think. But I know that you will enjoy this beautiful piece, and maybe I spark a little interest, and you will read a little bit and listen to the music and appreciate it. So anyway, waltz number 2 by the Inspirational.